Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're putting on our clinical psychologist hats to look at a genuinely fascinating behavioral pattern, the architecture of hyper-independence. We're going to explore exactly why your absolute refusal to ask for help isn't just you being stubborn. It's actually a deep-seated survival mechanism, literally hardwired into your mind.
So, you know that feeling when you've been banging your head against the wall for hours trying to figure something out? You clearly need a hand, but the mere thought of actually reaching out and asking someone feels, well, almost physically uncomfortable. You might tell yourself, oh, I'm just being independent, or I really don't want to bother anyone. But psychology shows us there's a hidden architecture at play here. Your brain is essentially treating a totally normal request for help like a massive threat to your physical safety. Why on earth is that? Let's dive in.
All right, Section 1, Presenting Symptoms, the refusal to ask for help. Like we just said, we constantly mask this behavior. We tell ourselves we're just fiercely independent. But looking at this definition, it brilliantly illustrates what's really happening under the hood. Hyperindependence is not about pride. From a clinical perspective, it is a complex survival tactic. It's a psychological shield. Your mind uses this shield to maintain rigid control over your environment, to protect your sense of personal value, and to navigate your relationships without getting hurt. In short, your brain is trying to keep you safe by ensuring you never, ever have to rely on anyone else. Moving on to Section 2, Etiology, the roots of hyperindependence. Okay, so this behavior doesn't just pop out of nowhere, right? Look at step 1. It almost always starts with growing up in an environment where things simply weren't handled for you. And because of that early chaos, bam, step 2 kicks in. Fixing things yourself completely transitions from being a choice into an absolute necessity just to get by. You literally had to figure it all out on your own. Over time, as we see in step 3, your brain permanently stores this defensive pattern. It learns that relying on others is dangerous, and fixing it yourself is the only guaranteed way to survive. And man, that early experience shapes you so deeply, usually without you even realizing it's happening. It effectively locks this hidden mantra deep inside your subconscious. I am the only one I can truly depend on. When that becomes your baseline operating system, anytime life throws a curveball, your brain immediately references this belief. Reaching out isn't even an option anymore because your programming insists that you are your only safety net. Which brings us directly to the illusion of control. Listen, if your entire identity is built on being the independent thinker, problems naturally create chaotic uncertainty. Following someone else's lead or actually accepting their help, that feels like a terrifying loss of control. Actually, it's more like losing a piece of who you are. Handling it yourself, even if it takes literally 5 times as long, is a psychological mechanism to turn that chaos back into something manageable. You'd probably prefer to fail entirely on your own terms rather than succeed by following someone else's advice. Let's look at Section 3, Case Profiles, How Childhood Shapes Adulthood. So our first clinical profile here is the ignored child. If your emotions were constantly brushed off or handled inconsistently growing up, your developing brain probably internalized a really painful belief that you just aren't that important. To adapt to that reality, you learn to completely hide your needs, to avoid the risk of being a burden. You basically start believing that you're replaceable, and because of that, you feel this constant pressure to earn your place in every single relationship by being the hyper-reliable one. Or maybe, just maybe, you resonate more with our second profile, the compulsive fixer. In this scenario, you don't just prefer to be helpful, you tie your entire sense of self-worth to being useful. Being the person everyone else relies on becomes the very core of your identity. Because of this, the idea of suddenly being the one who needs help? No way. That feels like a massive threat to your self-respect. You will step in to fix everything for everyone else to feel valued, but you absolutely refuse to allow anyone to do the same for you. That brings us to Section 4, Complications, Distance in Relationships. Here is the harsh truth. Those childhood survival tactics served a real purpose back then, but they do not just disappear. Today, they're actively creating severe emotional distance in your adult relationships. Because you've learned historically that speaking up doesn't change anything, silence becomes your automatic default response to any struggle. You refuse help. You actively refuse help because dealing with a problem alone feels vastly safer than risking the emotional pain of being ignored yet again. You struggle to let a partner step in, and while you're busy maintaining this massive defensive wall, you completely forget that mutual connection and emotional support are basic, non-negotiable human needs. And what does all this result in? An incredibly high tolerance for solitude and internal validation. Clinically speaking, it's really important to understand this. You aren't doing this to be mean or push people away out of malice. Not at all. You've just become so intimately used to your own internal driver, processing, fixing, and validating everything entirely on your own, that the very concept of sharing the wheel with a partner feels completely unnatural. It literally dysregulates your nervous system. All right, our final section, Section 5, Prognosis, Reclaiming Healthy Connection. So let's break down a really crucial difference here. Healthy self-reliance prioritizes your freedom and autonomy as a strength, absolutely, but it always remembers that connection is a basic human need. Damaging hyper-independence, on the other hand, actively uses autonomy as a shield. It refuses help just to maintain rigid control, it operates entirely out of a fear of being replaceable, and it views shared problem-solving not as teamwork, but as an active threat. Recognizing which side of this you're operating from is the absolute key to growth. Understanding the psychological mechanics behind your behavior, well, that's step one in dismantling that shield. And the absolute biggest takeaway here is this: you do not have to apologize for having needs. Asking for help doesn't mean you are failing, and it certainly doesn't make you replaceable. In reality, letting someone in when you are struggling is the exact mechanism that creates a deeper, far more intimately aligned connection with the people around you. So, now that you know exactly why your incredibly resilient brain built these defenses in the first place, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Your survival tactics absolutely got you here, but right now, they are keeping you isolated. So, are you ready to finally let someone else help you drive? Take a moment to really think about that, and we'll see you in the next explainer.